Jim and Lanny on stage at Upper St. Clair High School. Jim Render, who has won 406 games in his career, 5 WPIAL championships, 2 state titles, 23 conference championships, and at the end of the 2018 season, Jim Render decided to retire as the head coach of the football program at Upper St. Clair. Was that a tough decision for you?
Well, sure. It was tough because I told my wife one day, I said, you know, I've gone to football practice for 65 straight years, starting in the 7th grade when I was on a first organized team. So, you know, you play for 6 years in high school, 4 more in college, and then coach for 55 years. Why? So now, as we approach the fall of 2019, there's no practice to go to. So that's an adjustment. That's different.
Why did you think this was the time? What convinced you that you should retire now?
Well, my family's been wanting me to get out, and they have told me that there are other things in this world to do and see. And so, you know, I'm healthy. I had a good run at Upper St. Clair, and it's time.
Jim, I know you know this, but I want our viewers to know this. I cherish the friendship that you and I have had over the years. Interesting for me that I've had 2 outstanding friendships that involve people that are noted as being champions. You and Jimmy Leland, the former manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
He's in a little higher echelon than.
Well, but I've been around the 2 of you when you've had conversations, and I've been amazed that you've had a lot of questions for him about how to lead people in sports, and vice versa. He's asked you a lot of questions about that.
Well, I always enjoyed being around Jim. And I think he enjoyed, like if we were at a party setting or whatever, I think he enjoyed talking to another coach in the room. And I'm the same way. Pam, she's always on my backside that I can only talk to athletic type people. That I'm not a great glad hander at a function, you know.
When was it that you decided that you wanted to be a head football coach?
Well, I had an uncle whose name was Ike Truby. Truby being my mother's maiden name, and it's my middle name. And Uncle Ike was a football coach, and he was a head coach at Elyria High School for a while, and one of his athletes at Elyria was Vic Janowitz. Vic later won the Heisman Trophy at Ohio State. And something that you might find interesting, I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, but part of Vic's deal to go to Ohio State was that he signed a 3-year no-cut contract with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And that deal, I'm not saying it was legal or illegal, I don't know. But Mr. Galbraith, of course, was involved, and that deal was signed on my uncle's desk in probably 1949. So, and Uncle Ike taught Vic how to be a place kicker, and he taught me how to be a place kicker. And I don't know, somewhere in there I decided I wanted to be a football coach. And that was, I knew that, you know, most young people don't know what they want to do when they go to college, let alone as a freshman in high school. You know? So I was gravitating towards football very early.
I want to ask you more about coaching, quite obviously, but let me take you back to your high school and college days. Were you a good football player?
Oh, I was pretty good, yeah, I guess, for a high school guy, and
Quarterback in high school?
quarterback in high school. And of course, I'm not the tallest person in the world, but I like to run the ball. Running was more prevalent back then, than it is now. Now everybody wants to pass the football. But anyhow, yes, I was a quarterback, and I did all right.
How about at Wittenberg?
Wittenberg, I was a backup. We had a pretty good team, and I was also the place kicker. So, we won the national championship in 1962 and 1963, and some of the people that we had on that team wound up playing professional football. And so, being a backup wasn't too bad.
Place kicker.
Yes.
Soccer style, straight on?
Come on, Lanny. We're talking 50s and 60s here. I was a straight on.
You thought you were Lou Groza, right?
Well, Lou, my uncle, going back to my Uncle Ike, he later became a salesman for the All-American Reconditioning Company that they refurbished football equipment. And one of his jobs was to pick up the Cleveland Browns equipment. So anyhow, I had one of those square-toed shoes long before any other high school kid had one, and I had an old pair of Lou Groza's shoes. So I guess there's a little history there.
How many
people here are going to remember Lou Groza? Watching this, I hope.
Well, that's why I asked you the question somewhat tongue-in-cheek about soccer style or otherwise, but
I don't think, and I'm serious, I don't think there was a soccer ball in the state of Ohio when I was in high school.
There was not a soccer ball? Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, field goals. Did you kick a lot of them? Do you remember the longest field goal you ever kicked?
Yep.
And by the way, the goalposts were at the end line at that point, right? At the goal line?
No.
No?
I'm not that old.
Okay.
Old, but not that old. I had two memorable kicks. Akron University, the city of Akron had a stadium called the Rubber Bowl, after the tire industry. And Wittenberg played Akron in a rainstorm, and it had rained Friday night, and there was 2 high school games played on that field that night. And of course we're talking grass, we're not talking artificial. So anyhow, the mud was perhaps that thick, and they sent me out to kick a field goal right before the end of the first half. And I kicked, I think, about a 32-yard field goal in 6 inches of mud, and I made it. So that, selfishly on the sidelines, I was hoping the game would end, 3-0. We did score another touchdown and so forth. And then I kicked one at Hofstra University out on Long Island. Hofstra looked like the New York Giants. They were big, and they had the same uniforms, gray and blue and so forth. And they sent me out to kick this field goal in the wind. And a friend of mine who was the sports information director up in the press box said the New York writers started laughing. And they said they're not really going to have this kid try to kick a field goal out there in this. Anyhow, I remember I kicked it, and it started toward the goalpost, and then it went out, and then it came back in and fell in, and so that was about a 33-yard. So those were 2 memorable field goals. Yes.
All right, let me make sure I had this right. 2 years at Carrollton in Ohio?
As a head coach, yes.
Right, and then, 7 at Uniontown?
7 at Uniontown, yes.
What led to you becoming the head coach at Upper St. Clair in 1979, and then the run of 40 years as the head coach of the Panthers?
Well, Uniontown, we were in a league. It was called the Western Conference, the old Western Conference, which was everybody in the Upper St. Clair area, you know, Chartiers Valley, Keystone Oaks, Mount Lebanon, Bethel Park, Baldwin, Trinity, Cannon-McMillan, and Uniontown. So I was familiar with Upper St. Clair. Joe Moore came to Upper St. Clair the same year I came to Uniontown. And we had some great games, most of which I lost. But then we had a lot of league meetings in those days. So I knew Carl Lindstrom, who was the athletic director here, and I had known Carl for a long time. And so Upper St. Clair made a change, and originally I wasn't going to apply for this job because I thought, well, if I don't get it, there might be some bad feelings because we were still in the same conference. But anyhow, a long story short, Carl and I eventually linked up, and they offered me the job.
Is it true, I think this is from your Uniontown days, is it true that Pam, your wife, went to a game and she went to the wrong field?
Yes. We weren't married at the time. She and her mother drove over from Carrollton, Ohio, and I think they went to, I think they were at Keystone Oaks Stadium. And somehow her mother, I don't know, they soon discovered, one of them said, I thought Uniontown's colors were maroon and white, and the two teams involved didn't have any. Anyhow, they finally figured out that they were at the wrong place, and somebody sent them to the right place, which I think was Mount Lebanon, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, Pam has told me that story. I love it. How did you two meet?
Well, we met at the Carroll County Fair.
Oh, yeah? Well, how old were you?
How old was I? I was 28, I think, 29. Pam was she was a student at Ohio State, and you know, we were at the Carroll County Fair. The Boosters Club had a booth, you know, so I was there, and I said, "Who's that?" You know, that type of thing.
I strongly believe that your wife Pam is the prototypical football wife. She's been a tremendous support for you over the years, hasn't she? Well,
yes, she has, and she's allowed me to do my thing, you know, and she's one of these ladies that she can talk about me in a negative sense, but you can't, and so that's worked.
Now you're a great couple. So at Upper St. Clair, what has been the most meaningful aspect of your 40 years? The players, the championships, combination of all those things?
You know, it's the players. I've been so blessed with the amount of great young men that I have coached here. And, you know, I also decided to write about these young men for the USC Today magazine because so many of them, not only were they outstanding high school football players, they went on to college. Most of them that I've written about so far played college football, but more importantly, they have become very, very successful men in their chosen profession. Doctors, lawyers, financial wizards on Wall Street. Most recently, I wrote about Mark Gentile, who works for P.J. Dick Trumbull. In fact, he's now the president of Trumbull. And they build bridges and tunnels, and some of the work that he's been involved in the Pennsylvania, Ohio area is just phenomenal. So I'm very proud of so many of them. There's still a lot of stories to be written, and I don't know how much people read my stuff, but I'm trying to portray that there's been a lot of good young men come out of this high school. I one time gave a speech here in this auditorium, the baccalaureate address, and I made reference, and I had a bunch of these successful people here in the audience, and I told the graduates that some of these people sat in these same seats, and I listed some of the accomplishments. Missy Bertiotti was there that day, and Jerry Bertiotti, who was the quarterback on the first WPIL championship team we won, and I had the Mascaro brothers of Mascaro Construction Corporation, who they built Heinz Field. Well, I could go on, but I was trying to make the point to these graduates that a lot of good people have sat in these seats and went on to superior things. And so going back to your original question, I think old Jim's been well blessed with the people that he's crossed paths with here at Upper St. Clair. And
I know for a fact that you've stayed in touch, and a lot of your players have stayed in touch with you over the years, which I strongly believe means that there's been a tremendous connection between you and so many of your players.
Well, I hope so, yeah. Recently I went to Josh Helmrich's wedding down in Miami Beach, and that was, he now works for the National Football League. As Pam says, I can only talk to people that have some connection to football. So, anyhow.
Sean Lee, has he been the most successful player you've ever had?
Well, in terms of leaving here and going there, yes. Sometimes when I talk about Sean, I know of a few families that are saying, why not my son? And they're right. They were just as marvelous a high school football player as Sean was.
But in terms of going on to...
In terms of going on, Sean far exceeded anybody else that I particularly had here from Upper St. Clair. Joe Moore had several guys that went into the National Football League. But
is it true that Sean one day arranged for a tour of the Cowboys Stadium for you?
Yes and no. The Steelers played the Cowboys, and I went down. Unfortunately, Sean got injured before that game, but I didn't see all of that stadium. I saw a lot of it. I guess I can drop a name here for you, but Jim Nance of CBS fame, his sister had moved Upper St. Clair, and his nephew was playing for us at the time, and I met Jim, and I said to him, "You're not going to do the Dallas Cowboy Pittsburgh Steeler game by any chance, are you?" He says, "Yes, I am." And that was still 4 or 5 months ahead, but he knew that schedule. So, and I just simply said, "Well, I'm coming." And he says, "Fine, you'll be with me." So I was in the booth behind Jim for a while, and he had also made arrangements for me to see the truck, where the production And so I did have quite a day inside Dallas Stadium, but I didn't see it all. But that was a thrill, as was the day I stood behind Lanny in Yankee Stadium. Me being quite a Yankee fan, to be with you and in Yankee Stadium, that ranks up there too, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And as you know, I grew up as a Yankees fan as well, and so it was a big thrill for me to be announcing a game at Yankee Stadium where Mel Allen for so many years broadcast, and this is the old Yankee Stadium we're talking about.
Hi, everybody.
Two state championships, 1989. Give me your thoughts. Read that correct? 89?
Yes.
Okay, give me your thoughts about that state championship team.
Well, just to review history a little bit, we won the WPIL championship in 1988, which was the first year of that the state had state playoffs. And there were a few schools in western Pennsylvania, St. Clair being one of them, that didn't think the state would ever pull this off to have playoffs. So, as I recall, you had to tell the state in the fall, in September, whether you were going to participate in this tournament in November, and we said no, we weren't. Well, lo and behold, we won that championship in '88 and didn't go on to the state championship. Central Catholic, who we beat, eventually won the first state championship. So anyhow, coming into 1989, I remember having a conversation with our superintendent, Dr. Christiana, at the time. I said, you know, Doc, the chances of us going to the state playoffs maybe once every 10 years, you know. And we were standing out in front of the central office down in the parking lot. And little did I know that we'd be right back in it, you know, in 1989. But we were... And we were the first team in the state of Pennsylvania to win 15 straight games and become the state champion. So marvelous kids. The journey is always more fun to talk about, really, than the actual, you know, bringing home that trophy, which was nice. But we had quite a ride in 1989, and very memorable team. And the thing that I marvel about a lot of those guys, they're still very close to each other today. They still have mini get-togethers, and sometimes they invite me. So, great group of guys.
Can you remember from the '89 season a game that was most significant?
Well, that's an easy question. We won the last 4 games of 1988 and shut all these teams out. And we won the first 4 games of 1989, also shutting out all these opponents. So we hadn't been scored upon in the previous 8 games. And now we were going to play North Hills at Mortarelli Stadium. And it was televised nationally by what was called Sports Channel America at that time. So the stadium was jam-packed. You know, there was 8,000 or 9,000 people there, and it was on national television. And we got behind, I think, 26-0, and we did score before the half, so I think it was 26-7 at the halftime. And to fast forward, we had a great second half, and we came back and won the game, I think 27-26 or 28-26, and that was marvelous. You know, just marvelous. I heard from people all over the United States, and I know a couple of Steeler coaches were there, and I heard from them. The one being Ron Blackledge, who had coached in Massillon and Canton rivalries, and I had grew up in that area. So that 89 game at Mortarelli Stadium was a phenomenal experience.
Tell me about 2006 state championship team.
2006, I knew we were going to be pretty good. I guess I didn't realize how good. And we had good people at every position, and they liked to compete. And we got on a roll, and in that year, I had mentioned in 1989 we won 15 straight games, and in 2006 we won 16 straight games because the state had added another week in there that prolonged the thing. So we won 9 regular season games and then had to win 7 more playoff games to win that state championship. But it was another great ride.
Well, Jim, we've had a chance to chat with you about some aspects of your life. The show is 15241 Today Talk. Linda Dudzinski, our coordinating producer, Glenn Ward, our director. We'll have part 2 of my interview with Jim Render coming up right here on Channel 7. Stay tuned.